You are tuned in to the FowlWeather podcast, the forecast to your next successful hunt. Coming to you from the home office, Jack's Reef, New York.
Welcome to the Young Waterfowl Professional Series. All of us in the profession of waterfowl and wetland science, conservation, and management came from somewhere. These are the stories of young, passionate conservationists that have made their passion for the ducks into a career. The FowlWeather podcast truly believes that training the next generation of waterfowl and wetland scientists, conservationists, and managers is critical to keeping the ducks with us, keeping wetlands, grasslands, bottomland hardwoods, coastal habitats, and clean lakes and oceans with us so that the ducks have a place to live, so that people have a place to live, so that all the great people across Duck Country, USA have a place to recreate and see a sunrise with skies filled with ducks. To do that, we need these young waterfowl professionals to succeed. All the great waterfowl and wetland biologists out there helping keep our skies full came from somewhere. In this series, we invite young waterfowl professionals to tell us their stories because their stories need to be told. We also follow these episodes with YouTube videos, giving us a chance to put a face to a voice. So you see and hear the voice of conservation for tomorrow. To get to our YouTube channel, click on the link in the Spotify or Apple Podcast episodes and subscribe to our YouTube channel to meet all the great students throughout this 2025 series. They are truly our future. Thank you for joining us for the Young Waterfowl Professional Series. These are their stories. Today we welcome Catrina Terry. Catrina is the waterfowl research scientist for Ducks Unlimited's Great Plains region, where Catrina started with DU in 2021. So definitely still categorizes as the young waterfowl professional in our young waterfowl professional series. And Catrina is actually the inaugural guest on the FowlWeather podcast, Young Waterfowl Professional Series. So welcome, Catrina, and tell us a little bit about yourself. And don't be, we're as nervous as you about the inaugural episode. So hang in there with us for this little bit of time. Appreciate you being with us.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me. So I work for Ducks Unlimited. I'm currently based out of Bismarck, North Dakota. So even though it's spring for most of the country, we've had several inches of snow this week. But I've been really privileged and lucky to be able to work up in the prairies. It's one of the most important areas for waterfowl in the world. So it's been pretty awesome to start my career here.
I heard blue-winged teal started showing up like a day or two ago for y'all.
Yep. I haven't been out in the field too much yet. Our grad student just started, but I've been seeing blue wings, canvasbacks, redheads. We had pintails showing up, I want to say a month ago.
Yeah.
I don't know where they were going because there was no open water. But it was pretty awesome seeing thousands of pintails fly over in early March, which is uncommon. At least, this is my fourth winter. The earliest I've seen the ice off as well up here. So my grad student that's sampling wetlands currently is happy. She's not breaking through ice like normal.
So in early spring, you feel?
Yeah. Currently in early spring. I think pair surveys are going to start early, but in North Dakota, we could always get a blizzard at Easter,
right.
And that could change things. So it's been interesting. I feel like that's, the cool thing about the prairies is they aren't static. And so every year is bringing something different that I get to enjoy, I guess, or ponder as a scientist. I typically do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, I don't want to get too much into, we want to talk about your career path, but my stuff was kind of just a little bit of everybody helped me out, right? I wouldn't be here today without the great mentors, kind of the legacy of great waterfowl biologists before me and mentors from DU, Delta, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, state agency biologist, my own university professors and such, as well as family, right? Like family that kind of brought me into this type of stuff as well. And I don't want to eat too much time on my story because most of our dedicated listeners kind of at least know me a little bit. And I'm also old news, right? I am no longer. I just went over the hill at I'll be 51 this July, so no longer in the young category, unfortunately. But I mean, Catrina, like there are probably so many events in your life that kind of led you to where you are now. But was there either like a single event or like an accumulation of like organic events that led you to kind of want to pursue a career in that ended you up where you are today working with ducks?
Yeah, I guess I would say it was a culmination of events. I didn't know this was a career opportunity until a couple years into college. But as a kid, I was able to kind of do whatever I wanted after school. And thankfully for my mom, I was a pretty good kid. And so I grew up near a pretty major creek system that had wetlands around it. And I got to just go explore this creek, explore these wetlands. And for a couple summers, I would catch tadpoles with my little butterfly net. Um, I tried unsuccessfully to raise the tadpoles. They're all bullfrog tadpoles. I did not know that at the time. So now I really don't feel that bad about catching them. But unfortunately, where I used to catch all those tadpoles is now a housing development. So in California, where I grew up, I got to see a lot of development in the 90s, early 2000s. And even when I come back home, it's pretty insane how much of our natural floodplain is houses. But I still had no idea this was a career. And I went to community college at first, trying to figure out what to do with my life. And I took an intro to zoology class and learned more about, conservation and wildlife. And so at that point, I learned, okay, I can do this thing called wildlife biology, and I can travel and I can work outdoors. That sounds great. And so that eventually led me to UC Davis. And I had, really amazing opportunities to work with some great folks at UC Davis. Bob McClandress, he is definitely, if you go old school waterfowl people,
For sure.
it's Bob. And Bob, I would say, probably gave me like my first chance. I didn't know anything about waterfowl. I didn't have
And
a
what
good
was this like?
day.
Was this like freshman, sophomore year? Where were you when you kind of got a feel for it?
Yeah, so since I transferred in, I transferred
Junior.
as a junior status.
Yep.
So I already felt kind of behind. These students have already been volunteering. I was working at a restaurant, a steakhouse at the time, had no experience, volunteered at a zoo to try to do something. But I did feel a little behind transferring into Davis because now I had no experience trying to get experience. And I just would work these odd little volunteer jobs. And then I took ornithology with John Eady, and Bob
For sure.
McClandress was like a adjunct or emeritus professor at the time. And Bob, for whatever reason, felt like I had, I don't know, I guess
What it takes.
something in me. Yeah, I had something that it took.
Yeah.
And Bob was fantastic. He organized these, we called them Waterfowl Wednesdays, and he would invite professionals from the field. We'd go to this bar, drink beer, learn about ducks, talk about conservation. And that's where I got to meet people like Chris Nicolai and Caroline Brady. And Caroline was, the first woman in waterfowl I had ever met. And so I definitely idolized her and still do. But she was probably one of my first, mentors that I was like, oh, maybe this is a career opportunity.
So funny enough, Caroline and I crossed paths as well at Long Point, and she was also one of my mentors. Younger than me. No, I'm really kind of kidding, but just a wild child and lots of fun and very, very outgoing and kind of like the type of person that just gloms people on to the field for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But
Sorry
yeah,
if
I mean,
sorry if this is going to be a little
no,
organic,
you're good.
and I'm sorry if I interrupted your train of thought there.
No, no. I mean, I feel at least at undergrad, yeah, Bob and obviously John Eady. I mean, he definitely gave me my first opportunity in the field. I did have to bug him relentlessly to hire me. But I feel
Good for
like
you.
kind of after, yeah,
Good
I
for you.
mean,
Yeah.
I, I, yeah, I would just go to his office and be like, I want this job. And because that was kind of, I don't want to say the double-edged sword of this field is I could get experience if I wanted to volunteer, but I
Hmm.
had to pay rent and I needed a paid job. So even while I was going to UC Davis, I was working either at a steakhouse or like funding some kind of way to pay rent. So when John had an actual paid opportunity, I was like, I need this. Like, I can't work for free. That's just not going to happen. I don't mind working and also working for free, but then going to a school like UC Davis, it's hard to work a ton and be successful on a quarter
Hmm.
system. And so
So,
yeah, I bugged him and he eventually hired me.
so for the listenership here, UC Davis actually, I mean, folks might not think of California as an epicenter of waterfowl. I mean, some folks know that, other folks don't. But
Mhm.
UC Davis, it's is it in the Sac Valley or near the Sac Valley? It's in it or
I think
kind
it's
of.
technically considered the Sac Valley still, or
Hmm.
I guess it's a good question to know when it ends, but I would still consider it the Sacramento Valley.
Yeah, and so very waterfowl centric part of the world with a lot of change that's happened, as Katrina noted, and a fantastic school to go to for wildlife science and specifically ornithology and the waterfowl work that folks have done there. There's an endowed position there now in what I don't know if it's waterfowl and wetlands or waterfowl conservation, but it's been there for a few years, and now Kevin
Mhm.
Ringelman is in that position since John Eady retired. So that is the legacy, right? And then so master's degree, you
Mhm.
ended up where?
So in between undergrad and master's, I teched around for about 3 or 4 years, and ended up at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And actually, all of my work though was based in the prairies,
Gotcha. Yep.
but the actual school portion was at LSU.
Okay.
And that was also with Kevin Ringelman, who's now back at UC Davis.
Yep. Yeah. Very cool. And so you covered a bunch of mentor stuff, and we're all inspired by somebody. But I find that like continually there is almost like you don't do this alone. You don't live in a silo in this field. And so I my inspiration is my students now, right? Like I do still have mentors out there that I lean on for sure, even as I age, but my students are my inspiration. But who or what? It doesn't have to even be a person, continues to inspire you in this field and make you show up to work every day.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a lot that continues to inspire me, in one way or another. I think all the collaborators I work with, whether it's Fish and Wildlife Service or Habit or universities, we're all just still so passionate about conservation. And if we go really close to home, my boss at Ducks Unlimited, is Kaylin Kamink, and she definitely still inspires me. She is a very, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse, badass woman,
You're
especially in
fine.
waterfowl.
You're fine.
And she's just, hardworking, gets everything done. And I just admire the work she's doing, especially for the prairies and our breeding waterfowl. And sometimes it intimidates me because I'm like, can I even be this one day? But I think it's also a nice goal to work up to if that is my goal.
That's cool. And my wife's the same way. Like she works so damn hard that she intimidates me. Right. And like within the DU family, people are like, man, can I actually work that hard? Like, is this the job? And she's like, no, 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 no. Like, believe me, I have a sickness and I work way more than most people should. And everybody has different levels of it. But no, I totally get it. But those people push you, right? To be
Mhm.
better. And that's where
Yeah,
you need to
yeah.
be. So, yeah. You'd mentioned you did not grow up in a hunting family, though, but you found hunting later on, and it plays a major role in conservation. So, as the young waterfowl professional that you are, what role did hunting kind of help inspire you, help you bring you into the field, and how does it keep you running kind of on a daily basis? I see ribbons on your dogs, by the way. I believe so. There's something going on there with inspiration from dogs too. So,
Oh yeah.
give us the skinny on the hunting background, Catrina.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say like hunting changed my life, but it did change my hobbies. I got into hunting when I was about 22 or 23 at the end of my undergraduate career. They do like a first time hunt with Cal Waterfowl.
Yep.
So I was able to shoot my first ever duck, which was a really nice adult American widgeon drake. And then from then I pretty much quickly left California, moved to Nevada, and just had to flounder, I would say, and learn to hunt. You could shoot jacktail or like rabbits all year. And I lived pretty close to a BLM, so I would just go out and shoot rabbits and eat way too many rabbits. Because I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't own waders, I didn't own duck decoys. And thankfully through folks in this field and even just people I met because of my work, I got to be able to, go duck hunting more. And I really feel like hunting has helped just in my career, especially with working with landowners and stakeholders and other hunters. Knowing like what is going on at the ground is just so important, and being able to relate to them, even if you're not an avid hunter, you still understand like going out and watching the marsh wake up is just a totally like different thing. It's not, to me, it's not all about what I'm bringing home for dinner,
Sure.
but it's the whole experience. And I think, being able to work with stakeholders on that same level and kind of, have just a common ground is really important. And, depending on where you live in the country, like when I lived in Louisiana, you talk to hunters on a daily basis. But my work up in the Dakotas, most of these landowners aren't really hunters at all. They don't really care about ducks. And so it's kind of like, learning about this and balancing that, and, being able to talk to landowners about why I care about ducks, why we care about ducks. And I would say like on a daily basis, I try not to think about it, but we're going into a drought right now. And I think if this continues, I don't get to shoot as many ducks this fall. And it kind of bums me out.
Yeah, there's not going to be as many juveniles out there potentially, right? So if we're dry again, yeah. That's interesting on the perspective of when you talk to folks. I mean, it's different everywhere, right? And when I lived in Mississippi and rural anywhere in the U.S. for the most part, you run into hunters, and that's the general conversation that you have. But then that was interesting, and I don't think a lot of folks get that we really have to how people make it or break it in the prairies has very little to do with the ducks themselves. And so we have to find a way to keep that prairie landscape with us, despite the what seems to be at times actually animosity towards ducks, which is a bit of a frustration. And so going from a place like Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, anywhere, Sac Valley for that matter, where people are just insanely passionate about ducks and wildlife, to the place where they make it or break it. The birds do themselves, right? And then have a community of people that are difficult to convince of that is a bit of a frustration. So you have to somehow stay positive as well, right? Like that's you seem like a very optimistic person though, so I think we're in good hands there.
I try to be. I think working in the prairies can be depressing and a little bit of job security. So, I just try to weigh that in my mind.
Right.
But when the prairies are booming, it's just a beautiful place and it's hard to beat.
Right.
But
right.
when they're busting, it's not fun.
It's kind of gross. Yeah. Yeah. I've been
Yeah.
there. I've been there during both of them. I was up there this fall and it looked completely different from when I was there in 1998, 1999. So,
Yeah.
I get it, but it cycles. It's what it
Yeah.
does. It'll be interesting to
Yeah.
see after all, we talk about the drain tile and stuff on the podcast here and the changes to the prairies since the last drought, and we'll see how we come back out of this when water comes back, which it will. It's just whether it's just going to be
Well,
what does that rebound in duck populations look like, right? So,
yeah. And yeah, drought is really important for the prairies. Like
hmm
that's what makes it so productive as it dries out.
yep,
But
yep,
as a hunter, it's not as fun because, I like to hunt more than just ducks here because the grouse and the deer and the pheasants are all not going to do as well in a drought year either.
Well, but you switch over like at least. So when I was out there in the late '90s, all the cattail had been drowned out in northeast South Dakota, and the pheasant population, like I wasn't pheasant hunting at all. It was basically non-existent.
Hmm.
And since has rebounded. So there's at least that portion. And there's a good tweener spot for them for sure. Major drought
Yeah.
is a problem, but there's a tweener spot where they still do okay because they overwinter in
Yeah.
those cattails, right? And when those cattails get fully drowned
Yeah.
out, then you kind of lose that cover as well. So,
I mean, I can't imagine being a wildlife that stays up in North Dakota year round.
right.
Because
Yeah.
the grouse do well with bad winters.
hmm
They've evolved to handle a bad winter. But usually the pheasants will get got if we have a lot of snow or really cold days.
Yep.
So a couple years ago, we had one of the worst winters on records, and that definitely decimated some pheasants, but they rebound. They're fine. I still get to hunt a lot and shoot a lot, so
You must be lucky to have a wild population of them.
it's
Also,
pretty nice.
although if you talk to some people, your friend Chris Nicolai, and I'm fine because he's very open about this, like they're still a non-native bird. We have a put and take system, which I'm not a giant fan of, but the dogs love them. And
Hmm.
boy, they're a totally different beast when they're wild ones out there. I mean, they
Yeah.
they flush
Oh, it's
different, they
fun.
run, they're so much more fun than these,
Yeah.
put and take birds in the east. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I love watching dogs track, and when they're on a rooster track, and
oh yeah.
if I'm hunting my wire hairs, I have time. If I'm hunting my lab and she's on a track, you better start running because
Oh yeah, I jog. I jog behind my yellow labs all the time because they ain't stopping, right? So
yeah.
yeah, good for you for having a wire hair too. So our listeners really enjoy hearing about all the research kind of going on in the waterfall world. A lot of our listeners are really like data hungry people, like tuned into this stuff. Want to know how we make decisions and how all the like we're going into the data stream series about how the BPOP works and how harvest
Okay.
information program works and stuff. So be fine with nerding out a little bit on this, but like and it was a couple years ago, but not too long. So, what was your project that you worked on for your graduate degree? And then it sounds like you're guiding research now, right? With
Hmm.
VU. So maybe blend those two things of how, what you did during your graduate degree and then how it blended into your career now.
Okay. Yeah, so I was super fortunate when I started at LSU because my project was utilizing new technology with drones and
hmm
thermal cameras to see if we can survey for duck broods better. So ducklings are really hard to survey. They are camouflaged. They're really good at hiding. So a lot of our estimates from uh, duck brood surveys in the past aren't great. And in
hmm
order for us to effectively conserve habitat, we need to know, where these ducklings actually are. And so we started using drones equipped with a thermal camera. And so that thermal camera allows us to, see these ducklings in cattail. And otherwise, if you're on the ground with binos or you're in a car, you wouldn't see them. And so that was kind of the start of my master's research. My first year, we just did a comparison study, and we saw that with drones, we were much more effective and better at counting duck broods. And so my second and third season, we were looking at pretty much that duck brood abundance in a crop dominated landscape. So we were in the United States portion of the prairie pothole region. So North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, and Iowa. mostly in the eastern side of the Dakotas. So that's very crop heavy.
Yep.
And so all of my wetlands were pretty much surrounded by either by row crops, so either corn, wheat, or soybeans. So we were interested in seeing, are ducklings using these wetlands? Because those are kind of the wetlands that are most likely to, either be drained or just disappear entirely from the landscape.
Certainly.
And, it was the drone technology. I mean, now I'm more used to it. But in the early stages, it was stressful, but it was really cool. We found some really awesome data. Ducklings are using these wetlands at pretty similar rates that they are using wetlands that are in more prairie landscape. And I guess it was just, another thing to inform us that, okay, even though these wetlands are in a more fragmented, disturbed areas, waterfowl are still using them.
They're still using them. Did you follow brood survival or not?
No, this study did not follow brood survival. So we were just looking at abundance, and just looking at what influences abundance on a wetland, whether it's, vegetation, invertebrates, and things like that.
Yeah, and that's what I think the listeners need to understand is these things happen in steps, right? It's not like we have run a drone survey or drone research project, then we have all the answers all at once. And the technology's really come along. I mean, we did a drone survey in the Adirondack Mountains on beaver ponds. And it was a nice step in the process, but it may or may not even be publishable type work as well. So all of these, like the scientific process isn't like a boom, here you go, we're done. Like Delta's hen house stuff has been going on for years, and we know birds use them, but and we kind of know the utility of them, but there's a lot of still questions in there to be answered to help optimize that, right? And so this is the same thing with looking at conserving landscapes. But that's good to know. I mean, that's one of the things I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but as we lose grasslands and we have more ag type habitats, but we at least have wetlands remaining embedded in them, can we continue to sustain ducks? Because we know if we lose grasslands and wetlands, we can't. That's the nail in the coffin. But the question is, in a very denuded landscape, which is likely to happen of grass, can we still sustain ducks? We know we can't sustain grassland birds like bobolinks because they need massive pieces of grass. But ducks seem to be somewhat more resilient to that change. And that's kind of, I would say, almost like a little bit of what you found without going down the road of like brood survival, right?
Yeah, right. And then it's like when you're really looking into it, it's like species specific.
For sure.
You're gonna blue wings and mallards are probably going to be more resilient to a more fragmented habitat. But I do think wetlands are that more limiting piece. Like, yes, they need grasslands to nest, but if ducklings don't make it to a wetland, they're never going to survive because they have to eat those aquatic invertebrates and they need to be able to hide predators. So I would say wetlands are a more limiting resource on the landscape.
And then that upland, the buffer of that grass and stuff too. I mean, if it's a fully ag landscape around, the water quality has to kind of plummet in that then influences invertebrate communities as well. So there's a break point for those wetlands, I think, too, right? Especially because they're basins and everything from that ag landscape is just going into them. It's not like a river system where things kind of move more so through that system. They kind of concentrate in that wetland.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely influence from ag. And what's kind of really cool about these prairie wetlands is because they're so used to drought and deluge, they are in, negative 30s and 100 degrees. These aquatic invertebrates can actually handle a lot of just stress, I guess. I think a lot so than other wetland invertebrates. Because, there's definitely influence as far as diversity of aquatic invertebrates, but it does seem like we can at least get an abundance of invertebrates even in these very crop dominated wetlands.
Well, because when I was in the prairies, I mean, some of these at peak, invertebrate hatch type stuff, you could put your hand down in off a canoe up to your elbow and you couldn't see your hand. There were so many of them. So it was like just, ducks swimming in soup. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
food. So if you reduce it a little, they can still make it, right? And
Yeah.
so that's the little bit of buffer is what you just said. They're pretty. These
Yeah.
inverts to some extent are pretty resilient from this stuff.
Right. And
Um,
that's, yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, so that's just another aside to some other research that's come out of USGS several years ago, just showing that hens might actually basically go look at wetlands, different wetlands before they bring their brood to them. So like, is the hen potentially selecting for those aquatic invertebrates, or, that's kind of another piece of the puzzle that we don't quite know, but it was just pretty interesting to see.
Yeah, that's cool stuff.
Yeah.
So how did it lead into your current position? And you are kind of guiding kind of the overall research on the Great Plains now, right? So
Yeah.
what's the where did this all lead, and how did your master's research kind of play a role in your current position?
Yeah, so when this position came open, I felt pretty qualified, I guess. They wanted somebody with research experience, especially in the prairies, and that would help develop projects. So I felt very fortunate that I got this position. And since starting this position, I now have several studies doing brood surveys with drones.
Yeah, of
So
course.
I even asked in the interview, I was like, will I ever have to fly a drone? And they were like, absolutely not. But I think that's kind of what my master's research has led to, is we just don't know enough about duck broods. And, I know you guys are going to talk about BPOP, and we've already talked about it. But BPOP is just one little piece of the puzzle. Like, okay, yeah, these are where all of our pairs are. But the wetlands that pairs are using are typically not really available for duck broods, because those are the smaller wetlands, and those are going to dry up before these ducks have hatched. And, knowing more about kind of habitat use is going to just be able to allow us to deliver more effective conservation. Because obviously pairs and nesting, super important for recruitment. But that duckling is that last piece of the puzzle before it's really added to that fall flight.
Yep.
And so, a few of my projects are really geared towards understanding more about that habitat relationship with broods, and ultimately how we can get more on the landscape. And so,
Yeah, and it's because it's like who survives to fly south during the fall, into be part of that fall flight, which is a potentially totally different thing than how many breeding pairs there are, because in those years that we start to go into a drought, well, we send a ton back, but then the production is lower and lower and lower, right? And in the opposite on the other end, and the more juveniles you have in the flight, typically the better harvest you have, because there's a lot more naive birds in the population, and the quicker the population can grow as well. And it's a metric that we've done fairly well at starting to pay attention to, but there's a lot more room to fully understand what happens, after we just count the birds, right? So
yeah. So that's kind of culminated. Oh gosh, it's led to multiple of my research projects going
You're
on.
fine, because I have a chicken for whatever reason just squawking out my window in the background that the listeners are going to hear. So whatever hiccup you have is nothing compared to chickens just calling in the background. I can't do anything about the home office, Catrina. Sorry.
Yeah, hey, fair. At least my dogs haven't started barking, but the cat was meowing for quite some time. So
I didn't hear it. We're good. Good.
Now I forgot where I am.
We were going with the current, you got several projects. Now, are these your own, or are they with graduate students at other universities?
Yeah, so everything I do is a collaboration. I'm only one person. I cannot do multiple projects. That's the beauty of a master's project. You just have one thing to hone in on. And now I have several to think about.
That's a lesson for any students listening, by the way. If you think your world is coming to an end, it gets way worse than this. You have to do multiple things someday instead of just one. So
so all of my current projects are collaborations with either, I mean, pretty much all with universities. We have grad students on multiple projects. Happet is a collaborator, North Dakota Game and Fish. And so we're all working together, for
And Happet is, just for the listeners,
Habitat and Population Evaluation Team, right? Shoot.
Sounds right. Yeah. I was letting you do it because I'd kind of drawn a blank this Sunday morning. So yeah.
Yeah. So Happet is who is making that thunderstorm map.
Yep.
So they're using all that pair survey data, and they're actually the ones making that thunderstorm map that we're using to make our conservation decisions. So
which is the thunderstorm map is the density of breeding pairs on the prairie landscape. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, even though we're not the ones conducting those pair surveys, we're working with Happet and Game and Fish to make sure, we know like how that pair survey distribution changes. Yeah. And so Happet and Game and Fish is also interested in doing something similar for duck broods. Mm-hmm. And so we have one graduate student. She's starting this summer doing roadside brood surveys in North Dakota, with kind of the grand scheme of doing roadside brood surveys across the prairie pothole region. Another grad student is looking at, so we have a lot of, conservation programs. So, in an ideal world, we can put easements on everything, but that's not an ideal world. Landowners don't want that because it's forever.
Right.
And so we work in different ways to try to work with landowners. So we have programs that do regenerative ag. And so we have a grad student, evaluating how regenerative ag impacts our wetlands. So that aquatic invertebrates, the nitrogen and phosphorus in wetlands, and then also how that can impact the pairs and broods utilizing those wetlands. So for the brood surveys, I help her with that, and she does everything else.
So you do get plenty of field time still.
Sometimes, but what's unfortunate? I do love duck broods, but sunrise in brood season is about 5:30 a.m.
It is early, and sunset is super, super late too for y'all. Yeah. So your days are long. Your days can be long. I remember working out there, and I'm like, what? I'm gonna work 16 hours today?
Oh yeah, like, wow. You can't.
Yeah,
well,
easy.
Especially living here full like 365 days a year, you take advantage of the daylight. So
yeah, because winter's not great, right? Winter's not great. yeah. This sounds awesome. I mean, we could go on and on, right? I want to talk about all the cool things y'all are doing, but it's the punchline is that it is largely like, how do we spend, and this is one thing DU does very well, is how do we spend our conservation dollars more efficiently, given that we can't conserve everything everywhere all the time. So what is the best bang for the buck? So that's always the driving factor for this, right?
Yeah.
But let's go on to like some, maybe thinking about, lessons for folks a little younger than you coming up, right? Like a critical life lesson to date, that is aiding you in your career moving forward, but would also help someone kind of moving in, below you. So, you seem stressy about that. Like, I'm still figuring that out.
It's like, when you're in a job interview and they're like, what is your biggest strength? Or like, I feel like I'm in a job interview.
Hey, I sent you the questions ahead of time, so this is fair.
Yeah, I looked at them this morning.
You're good.
Okay, I don't know if this is necessarily a critical life lesson, but it's one thing I'm still working on, is especially as you come into your career, people are going to ask you to do things and you say yes to everything. But now that I have worked for a few years and I have my hands in a bunch of different projects, I am trying to learn to say no. Mm-hmm. Which is very hard.
Yeah, I think that's definitely like early to moving into mid professional actually kind of attribute. I think when you're young, you're just like, yep. Well,
why not?
Because if you don't, somebody else is going to, and they're gonna get above you very quickly, mm-hmm. right? I found that.
It makes it makes you feel good to be asked. You're like, wow, you want me to do that? I'm capable.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But now yeah. And then eventually, last week I got asked to do a presentation and I'm like, I don't even have time to give this presentation or make one. And my boss was like, why don't we ask our graduate student to do that? And I was like, you're smart.
So delegation is also one of the things you learned as you move through your career. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. So if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
So this in particular, or conservation in general?
However you want to answer it, Catrina. It's a wide open question. Did you have other aspirations, or was this like all like at one point this clicked and you really didn't see like this was it? This is where I was going type thing. Is that where it was at?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, when I went to college, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And then I found this and just kicked off from there.
Mm-hmm.
Something you mentioned earlier is, science is a very long-term thing. It could take 5 to 20 years from the project you created to actually be finished. And
Patience. So patience is a virtue in this job.
patience.
Yes.
And so I've always kind of like the last couple years been thinking that it might be nice to deliver mail for the postal service.
I'm gonna take a break because at one point, because I'm a 9-month employee, I was like, I'm gonna be a full professor someday at 9 months, and I'm gonna drive a truck across the country for a trucking company for 3. And just check out completely and be a truck driver professor and probably be the only one out there. And the reason that never happened is because it's impossible. And that's why there's none of those out there. So maybe, but you could, delivering mail. I
mean, I wouldn't want to do it in North Dakota. Like maybe bring me somewhere more mild. I can't imagine delivering mail when it's -30 or there's a blizzard. But I feel like you have good job satisfaction. You get your route done. You deliver everything. You're good for the day. And I feel
you're done.
like science is sometimes hard to have that job satisfaction.
One of the things I think that the young professionals out there coming up have to recognize, and probably you have, is that you have to meter yourself and work on your own mental health and stress because as much as I said before, you need to like take those things on. Right now, I could work 24 hours a day. There is nothing stopping me. I am my own monitor. I am my own success and my own failure. But you have to find a way to detach yourself from your work because it should be at times all consuming. It's what we do, but it can't be that way all the time. So as opposed to delivering mail, when the mail's done for the day, you just go home. You just go home. I mean, you got to go back to the post office and sort more mail, I think, a little bit. But anyhow, I mean, it depends.
I feel like they probably have a good 9 to 5 schedule.
I think so.
Hopefully decent benefits.
I think so.
But yeah.
That's a fun one. I didn't expect to hear delivering mail. So.
I do. I've thought about it. Because I feel like you could listen to an audiobook or a podcast or music and just get your steps in for the day. But yeah, I mean, if I work until the job is done, I would just forever be working. Like that's not, and there are definitely like wins throughout the scientific process, but the actual done job takes a long time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's, I mean, we signed up for it. I always tell my students it is, and everybody says, these jobs don't pay a lot. And I mean, you could be with some of us, maybe with our brains could be Fortune 500 folks, but we chose something else. But it's not like, it's not comfortable, right? Most of the time, the quality of life is awesome for most of us. And we're doing something we really want to do. I mean, I wake up at 4 a.m. and make coffee and sit down at the computer excited for just about every damn day. And I've been doing that for 30 years now, right? Every single morning, I wake up excited about the next day of what we're all going to do and the positive progress for wildlife and for people that we're going to have. So where does it go from here, Catrina? This is,
Um,
what are your goals?
I know. I'm like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think I'll for sure keep working for DU. I really enjoy working for ducks in our conservation mission. And I think we're just doing really great work. Um, Whether or not I stay in North Dakota for the rest of my life is up in the air, but
Oh,
eventually, you know,
we're gonna bring this. I'm gonna cut you off. I apologize. I'm one of those
okay,
people. I apologize. I lived in the
you're
South for
good.
a while, and we fared okay. I did learn to listen better. It's changed me as a person, and I appreciate very much my friends in the South. My pace can be bad as a New Yorker originally, and my brain doesn't work in linear patterns, and I apologize for that. But what you had said, and where I want to go with this, is because this is the Foul Weather podcast, and you grew up in the Sacramento Valley, in Sacramento. What? Um, Let me restate that. Could you, as a child, appreciate 2 feet of snow and 2 feet of ice?
Absolutely not. I didn't even know what hard water was.
Right, right. And this is one of the things I always try to get. I'm like, this isn't a negative thing to my friends in the South and all the duck hunters across all the great parts of duck country in the South. It's just like when we talk about as kids, when in the North there was 2 feet of snow and 2 feet of ice, and the 2 feet of snow started around Thanksgiving, and the 2 feet of ice started around Christmas, and it stayed through the end of February. And
Hmm.
now that's truncated by almost like a month to like 2 weeks at least on either side of it. And I always say, like, look, the weather is not what it used to be. And it's hard. Like, this is where I think folks in the South and everywhere in the Southern US, it's hard to understand that change. Because when I lived in Mississippi, it still got really wet and cold, right? And if it was wet and cold in Mississippi, didn't mean that there was 2 feet of ice and 2 feet of snow up north. It could have been, or it couldn't have been. But it's like when we talk about how the weather has changed and how way more ducks are staying north, and that's like a major driver of what you're seeing now. And of course, there's variation of that year to year. But I always think when I talk about 2 feet of snow and 2 feet of ice, they go like this, but their brains don't quite compute it, right? And because that's a
Yeah,
situation where ducks can't stay that we don't see anymore. So I
yeah,
just wanted to get
yeah.
a feel for that because seeing that you're in North Dakota now and have looked at hard water, very. I mean, we have drill bits for our augers for ice fishing that almost bottomed out this year. We hit up in the
Yeah,
Adirondack Mountains. We hit a point where we almost had to. You got to put additions onto your drill to get through. So I'll
yeah,
stop there. But
yeah. Ice fishing, I don't really love being cold still. Ice
there's
fishing is
heaters and
not quite
huts.
my
Like, come
sport.
on.
Yeah, I like the aspect of drinking beer and hanging out with people, but I feel the same for open water fishing. So maybe it's
Yeah.
the act of fishing I'm not that into.
Well, if it
But
helps any, I hate duck hunting in cold weather, and that seems like an anomaly among people that duck hunt. So
I'm like, oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, the year-to-year variation and kind of what I thought was really cool. So, prior to actually moving to North Dakota, I had spent 4 or 5 summers up in the prairies. So I came up here after the thaw out, everything's already growing,
hmm
birds are already here, the wetlands are all open. And it really makes you appreciate seeing that full cycle. Like, even though I understood how the wetlands filled, like actually seeing that you need like a frost layer on the ground is really important. And so that way, when the snow melts, it's all going to still go into that wetland. And so it's really just seeing kind of like the year in the life of the prairies, just seeing how they go from just this alive thing to a very silent creature in
yeah,
January. And then you start hearing geese and pintails and mallards, and the water is opening it up. And it just really makes me, I mean, I appreciate robins coming back in the
yeah,
spring,
yeah,
and seeing all these just local birds and, living in North Dakota. even in Bismarck, you look up and like right now we have so many geese and you'll just see lines of geese everywhere. And it's just been really cool to see, year to year, just like these birds coming back to the prairies. And last year we had a really warm fall. I mean, we were duck hunting
Yeah.
until the end of November,
Yeah. Yeah.
on open water.
No, I was there. I was in South Central North Dakota, and we pushed it to like the third week of October, I think, and 2 years ago, y'all had a snowstorm before that. And I was
Yeah.
like, but being the weather guy, I'm like, we're good, but it was still sweltering hot in the afternoons. And our hunting, I mean, we had days that we just didn't shoot ducks in North Dakota,
Mhm.
right? Like, okay, we just were like, screw it, it's hot, we're gonna go pheasant hunt instead. Like
Yeah.
we weren't pushing it. We're not jumping birds. We're trying to find birds, and nobody's field feeding in 75 degrees really anyway.
No.
A little bit, but not a lot. So yeah, I get it. It was a warm fall up there for y'all. So
Yeah, yeah, which is it was nice because in January when it was -30, I think we somehow black all that out and then we just live in the nice weather for the next 8 months.
well, we're entering, I think, the best part of the year. I'm going to be in Mississippi starting tomorrow. I'm doing a jump start on turkey season a little bit because our turkey season here
Okay.
in New York doesn't open till May. But our phoebe showed
Oh
up, our
wow.
tree swallow showed up. Like, we're bird nerds at the farm here, and so I'm just like absolutely thrilled for the woods to turn green. All the spring ephemeral flowers to pop up, all the birds to come back. Our waterfowl have almost left already, but we're still in that great part of the year. Like, every single week is something brand new from now
Yeah.
till June, and y'all are like in the middle of it too. I remember being on the prairies, and it is awesome. I think it's actually the best time of the year to be there, and I think it's something that our duck hunters should do more if they can, is go see the prairies in like late spring, early summer. It is freaking awesome. Like, it's
It's
probably one of the
awesome.
greatest spectacles I've ever seen. Spectacles I've ever seen. Once the ducks once the ducklings start to hatch or they start to incubate, it gets really, really boring because nobody wants to be seen, and all of a sudden you're like, "Where'd all the ducks go?" Right?
Hmm.
And hence the drones because they don't want to be
Yeah.
seen. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, spring and early summer, it's just so beautiful. Especially like last year was maybe we didn't have a ton of wetlands on the landscape, but we had a lot of good growth because it just rained so much in May.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
we had green grass for months. And it was just really nice. Now we're back in a drought and there's a burn ban, but
Hmm. Well, maybe you'll get a little bit of rain again in the coming months to help you out. It has been really, really dry though. Some parts of the prairies got like northeast South Dakota and stuff. Some places got like 6 inches of snow
yeah,
recently,
yeah.
which may help because it'll hang out a little bit, or you think it's just going to disappear pretty much?
So I guess it would depend, because I mean, I don't know what our frost layer is at, but it seems like a lot of the water just went right into the ground, which is really great for our grasslands,
Right.
like for growing crops and everything. But we really need that frost layer in order for all that water and
Hmm.
snow to go into the wetlands. And South
Yep.
Dakota is really dry.
For
I
sure.
think we're really dry here. But when I look at like the drought monitor for South Dakota, it's terrible.
Yeah, no, it's way, way worse. Some of the Canadian provinces look more reasonable than they have in the past, but it's still not. It's Hey, we're not 100% of it's in the poor category. Some of it's in the fair. I'll
Yeah,
take it for
yeah.
now, right?
Yeah,
So,
and I mean, I talk a lot about the prairies because this is where I work. But the boreal, I don't know if you talk, I guess when you talk to Matt, you might talk more about the boreal. But that's a really important place
mhm.
for ducks and waterfowl. And when the prairies are dry, they have another resource to go nest in.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
but
Yeah, we got to remember it's the parkland and the prairies and the boreal, and the boreal is gigantic. We deal with that in the east because Quebec. A lot of our birds in the Atlantic Flyway come out of Quebec, and it is just vast. But if there's like one pair of pintails per like 19 square kilometers or something, it's still a ton of pintails or something, right? So you got to imagine that, how those birds spread out. But it is, we need the
mhm.
prairies to get wet to go back into those boom years.
Yeah.
It'll come, so hang in there. I think you're going to be seeing some good years to come, we hope. And
We hope.
so what I'm going to do then, I think, is we'll sign off for now. We may have you back, Catrina. I really like your story. Thanks for sharing it with us. And if I could provide any advice to you, it would be to sustain that optimism in a place that doesn't always leave you that way. I remember living there and seeing it go from green to brown in the fall. The prairies is a special place that takes a special person to live in, and especially move there. Like if you grew up there, you can deal. It's like me in Western New York in the snow belt, right? Or being a Buffalo Bills fan. I'm accustomed to too much snow and plus disappointment. But somebody going there, keep the optimism, keep your chin up, focus on the long game, and really appreciate everything you're doing for the prairies, and as well as not just getting the good work done yourself and then going into the field and just delivering conservation, but continuing to do some of the science too that we need to guide things. So thank you very much, Catrina, and thanks for being a great guest and passionate conservationists out there doing the good work for us all.
Thanks for having me, Mike.